Okay, so today on the Jetpack YouTube channel, I'm talking to James all about his experience with Jetpack and, in particular, Jetpack newsletter, because we saw quite a nice tweet that he tweeted out around WordCamp Europe that as soon as he started to enable some additional newsletter features, his subscribers have started growing a lot faster than they did previously. And I just wanted to spend a bit of time talking about James's story, a little bit of James's background, and hopefully you can learn a little bit more yourself about how Jetpack can help you grow your audience, help you get your message out to more people, and just help keep you motivated to write that content. Because I don't know about James, but for me, when I'm writing content and I've got no subscribers or no followers, it gets quite hard to stay motivated to write a piece every week. So then over to James. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how long you've been using Jetpack for.
Hi, everyone. So I have been a Jetpack user on and off for probably about 10 years at this point now. So it's been quite a long journey. When I look in my Jetpack stats, it's fun to look back at, 2014, 2015 and see some of the stats from back there and compare it to now and how things have gone. But I've been a marketer, a speaker, a writer in the WordPress ecosystem for over 10 years now. I've worked in a number of different product companies, tech companies doing all kinds of different things. And in the last probably 6 or 7 months, I've had a couple of unique experiences, I would argue, with blogging and writing. I was invited to participate in a writing experiment on the WP Tavern, which is a really big, if not the biggest, publication in the WordPress ecosystem. So those people who build WordPress really, like, that's one of the main news sources. And so I was one of 7 people who had the opportunity to write there. And before that, I had done a lot of, your standard marketing writing, I guess is the best way to describe it. 10 things, your top 10 things to do with this product, or, how to use this feature and unlock this value, and those kinds of things. I'd done a little bit of writing on and off over the years, but had never really committed to it. And so this experience with the tavern actually gave me the opportunity to dedicate real intentional time to writing and this art of writing. And so I got into it and found I really enjoyed it. And so when that term ended, I thought, I like this too much, so I'm going to start up my blog again and get back into writing and try to write a little bit more regularly. So I rebuilt my personal blog and redesigned it and did a whole bunch of fun things on it. And one of the things that I found really helpful on the Tavern site was that it had Jetpack installed and had stats, and you could see things. For those of you who maybe are familiar with Jetpack, there's this really interesting feature of when you go to publish your article, you get this sort of like pre-checklist where you can, send all of your subscribers an email with your latest post. And for me, it was really nerve-wracking the first time I ever went to publish a post on the tavern, because they had like thousands and thousands of subscribers and nobody had heard anything for months at all from the tavern. It's been on a bit of a furlough. And so um, I was the first one to publish an article, and so like hovering over that publish button and do I send the email or do I not? It was like really nerve wracking, but I hit send, and that was the beginning of the end. And so when it came time to redesign and rebuild my own personal blog, I wanted to have Jetpack features installed there as well.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting when you're saying about the tavern because I'm from Manchester in the UK, and I used to go to the local Manchester meetups run by
Mm.
Mike Whittle, and he at the start of every meetup he said the only place I get my news is WP Tavern. So he started off the session saying this is what's been happening over the last month, and he'd have a bunch of tavern tabs open and be clicking through. each one and just moving on to talk about the key things that he was picking up from like WordPress Tavern. So I think like that heritage in that publication and having the chance to write for that, and the fact that it's carried on into, it's giving you the writing bug to carry on doing that, I think that's really interesting. And you're saying like you've used Jetpack for 10 years, you've been creating content for 10 years. I think a lot of people just starting out don't realize that it does take time to start growing an audience. And you see all these success stories on where I don't know how much, whether they're paying for those subscribers through ads, but they're like, I started my newsletter, I'm on 100,000 subscribers already. But then like that, like you don't need 100,000 subscribers if like 99,000 of them are just bots. So that's a good balance of like knowing that you're growing your audience to like 1,000 true fans that really appreciate what you're writing. So then you don't need to worry too much because like these are the people that like are following me, and getting more content out and learning a bit more about the Mikes and the James and everybody else that are using products like Jetpack, I think helps people then think, actually, I can start using this too and see the same type of success that James has been having or that WP Tavern has been having. And just sort of leaning back into the stats again, I find it really useful to see like how many likes and comments I'm getting over time, because another advantage of like publishing with Jetpack is you will get included on like the WordPress reader, and people can follow your sites and they may get recommended your site that they might not have come across from any other means. So it does help you grow your audience that little bit faster than if you were just using a different email provider.
That for me was a feature I didn't realize was actually part of Jetpack. I've used things like Medium before, and Substack and different things like that. I've experimented with a few different tools, but um, that was one of the things I liked about Medium was, your articles would be recommended to people that weren't already part of your audience. And so when I found out that Jetpack had the reader and a very similar feature, I thought, oh, that's really neat and a great way to think about audience growth as well, that people who are already using Jetpack or WordPress, for me in particular, because I write about WordPress and the community and the ecosystem, I thought that was kind of neat.
Mm.
And the stats, oh my goodness. I look at the stats, like 10, 12 times a day. Like, it's just something I'm just like, scrolling, and I have the Jetpack app. So like for me, it's fantastic because I just have the stats open on my app and I take a quick refresh every hour or so just to see, okay, that's cool. It's gone up a little bit. Oh, we got like 5 new people reading it from Japan or from Norway, right? Or wherever. And it's just the stats and the things that are there. I don't know. I get addicted to stats because it's like my own pat on the back, right? Like it's sort of like that one thing that shows me, oh yeah, people are actually reading. It's scary, right? When you
Yeah.
realize people are reading and commenting and liking, but then it's like, no, this is really cool. Like I'm actually contributing something to this wider conversation we're having in our industry, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, if you're addicted to stats, then I'd probably recommend not starting a YouTube channel, because that's another place where you keep like refreshing like how many
Absolutely.
views, how many comments, and
Yeah.
like the type of reach. So just being able to see like what type of posts are resonating. And one thing I quite like and again, this is linked to like the related post thing. So again, on the WordPress reader, you'll be reading an article, and then different articles might pop up that are related to the topic you're reading, that might be from your blog, that to discover you that way as well. And YouTube do that really well, like with the suggested videos at the end of a video that you watch that you end up clicking through. And I think it then starts leaning into even more importance around like your titles and your thumbnails even for written content, that like some people may not even have featured images, but now there's a lot more because they don't know how to create them. But now there's even tools in Jetpack that can help you just use AI to generate a featured image, or AI to suggest like different titles that could be more click worthy. And I think it comes down to, because I was listening to a podcast saying like it's attention that you're trying to get, and if you don't get that initial click or that initial like grab of attention, then no one's even going to discover your writing. So you could have written the best piece in the world, but if it's not attention grabbing, then like you're not getting those views. So the nice thing about the stats is you can see that as well, like which posts are. You can compare posts to the last post and say like, well, I've had the same audience, I've got the same like traffic coming in from Google and the search engines, but this one's done so much better with likes and comments, and that's a really powerful thing for me to sort of know which content is resonating and I should do more of. And so, yeah, that's some of the things I obviously like about Jetpack as well. I am part of the Jetpack division, so I'm not paid to say this. I've used Jetpack again, similar to you, back since 2010 when I started with WordPress, and we sort of just I've built my own products since then and joined Automatic like through an acquisition rather than like always being a Jetpack person. So one thing I like of having these type of chats is that there's a lot of things in Jetpack that a lot of people may not know about if they're just used to old perceptions that it slows down the website or it's crashed a few times after a plugin update. And there's so many other plugins that do a similar type of thing. Like there's various plugins that just have taken my website down. I'm like, oh, that was that update. But then that sort of doesn't stick to the wall as much as with Jetpack. Like if something happens on a Jetpack, they're like, oh, it's because it's Jetpack. So, and I think the way that we're moving towards like you can install different plugins, and that perception of bloat and slowing down is probably 10 years old now. And we're just not talking about all these new things that you can do around Jetpack. So I think it's really interesting to talk a little bit about the stats, a bit about the newsletter features, and just generally other things that you sort of like. And it doesn't have to be limited to Jetpack. If there's another cool feature in WordPress that you like really like recently, then we can sort of lean into that a little bit. But you also mentioned before we started the recording that you had a couple of realizations. So the first one was writing content and growing your stats. What was there another one?
Yeah, so I mean, growing my stats was good. You mentioned as well, this post that I put on X about my subscriber growth, and at that point, it was at 33%. But I'm happy to report that it's actually doubled. So
Well,
in the week since I turned on the the new subscribe features for Jetpack, my subscriber count has doubled. And so like more than double now, and that's
yeah,
just within a week or so. So I'm like, that to me was a real eye opener of like, okay, here's features like maybe, I don't know, I'm always hesitant to turn things on if I don't have to, only because like, I'm thinking performance, I'm thinking usability, I'm thinking all of these kinds of things, and the overall experience for my readers, right? I want them to have a good reading experience, and I don't necessarily want it to be super disruptive. But recently Jetpack rolled out this new pop-up thing that shows up, that allows people to subscribe in mid scroll. So as you're scrolling through an article, this very nice little pop-up comes up. You can click it away very easily, and I hadn't turned it on. And when I was getting a demo at WordCamp Europe, they said, "Hey, yeah, we've got this thing. You can check it out." And I thought to myself as I came back to write an article, I thought, "Oh, I'll just turn it on and see what happens. Nothing's going to hurt for one article." And to see the impact, I'm like, "Well, I'm sold. Clearly, that's not going away." So that
yeah.
was kind of exciting.
And the nice
Um,
thing about the modal is it's a Gutenberg block, so you can click and you can edit it and you can change how it looks. And so that there are like additional things like that coming with the Jetpack newsletter. So I don't know if you will remember the blog roll where you used to do links to
mhm.
site that you'd recommend. There's I don't know if it's available everywhere just yet or whether it's just on WordPress.com, but there'll be a little subscribe button next to those blog rolls. So if you put like these are my 5 favorite publications, then people that see it in the footer can just click subscribe and then they'll immediately be subscribed to that site as well. So again,
Mm.
that's another little engagement and subscriber boost from like people discovering your content on other people's websites. So it's not just like a link list anymore. It's a link list with a call to action to subscribe. So again, I think
Oh,
that's
very
a
cool.
really nice coming addition. That again, I've seen it. Like, I think knocking around on like WordPress.com. sites. I've not seen it too much in the wild on like self-hosted Jetpack sites yet. But I think again, it's that shift of people. They probably have used the blog roll block when it was the blog roll block, but then now it's got this added functionality coming. Then that's a really useful one to start thinking about. Like, how can you as a writer get on other people's blog rolls, because it can get you more subscribers and more readers, and just sort of building that network of people that are recommending you. And it can even be people that are reading about you as well. Like the number of people that have their own website that would be happy to pop a link in the sidebar is probably a lot more than you would expect.
I have found that for me as well. Like one of the things I used to ignore were pingbacks that would come to the website, and so on articles, I'd always decline pingbacks and not do that. But with my blog in this latest iteration, I thought, no, I'm gonna like let that kind of stuff show, because it's kind of cool to see that little bit of history of, where this article's been referenced, and that creates that sort of like actual web experience. And I regularly am referencing other articles and other sites in my own writing and trying to spread the love, so to speak, a little bit. And so I'll pay it forward. Maybe one day I'll see my link backs on other websites as well, and we'll have this renaissance of blog rolls and pingbacks as we get back into the authentic web. With AI as great as it is, I think you probably would agree that authentic writing and human writing is going to have its own renaissance as people look for those folks out there who are willing to write about their lived experiences and their own thoughts, and not necessarily just whatever Chatty tells us to write.
Yeah.
That those kinds of things are going to become more prevalent, and finding those people is going to be a bigger deal as well.
Yeah, and I think that's diversification of content. So I did a webinar last night touching on AI, and a lot of the questions from the people that were watching that webinar were all around like, do I get penalized if I'm using AI? And just like, how do you stay authentic and build like an audience trust? And I think it does become more to like spreading out to different types of content, whether that's starting a podcast, whether that's starting to do video content, because I say now, like it's 2024. I say it's going to be harder for AI to do like this type of thing. But then you see some of the things coming out of like that Sora that you think, is it going to be hard? Or like Hey Gen is another example where you can record yourself talking, like I think a short video, give it a script, and it'll pop out a video of you talking that script. And
Wow.
I don't know if you saw, they used it on David Beckham to do like a campaign against malaria, where David Beckham spoke like all the different languages, but it was AI. It wasn't the real David Beckham. So that was
Oh, wow.
a really interesting one. So I think it's going to be something on
Huh.
everyone's mind. It's like, how do you use AI to complement what you're doing, not just churn out AI rubbish. Because I can certainly tell certain like AI written content. It will start off with like, we're thrilled to announce like the latest edition, and loads of like sort of AI keywords, and like some people might leave bits in where it's like, and in conclusion, like it's incredibly important to like do XYZ if you're thinking of running a webinar, would be another thing. So I think it does become that like people will tell, Google will be able to tell, and like that authentic writing will come up. And again, it's like whether you'll end up as authors, and like I know there's been the changes to the gravatar, like maybe you'll end up with some sort of like score of your content that's out there across all of the different places that you're connected. So Twitter, YouTube, if you've got a YouTube channel, your blog, how many likes, how many comments, how real is this like creator, or that could be a future that we see. So again, I've got no insider knowledge of what's being planned on the gravatar. This is just me thinking Black Mirror style into like, what could the future of like a person's online profile be? Like, how does that all tie together to make sure that you are reading content from real people?
That's interesting that you say that. There's one thing so Gravatar just recently launched their .link URLs. So I was over there setting up my jamesdrew.link URL to get that going for Gravatar. and I was adding some photos in, and I was adding, URLs, and then I thought to myself, wouldn't it be fun if Gravatar had a like my 5 latest posts or
Mm.
something like that, from my Jetpack connected site or whatever. I thought that might be a really neat addition that would, drive again more traffic to the authentic content that I'm producing, or maybe it's the 5 posts that I want to highlight that I like or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, so Gravatar was fun to hang out on. But yeah, AI authenticity. Yeah, it would be interesting to see what kind of like an authenticity score might look like. Like an 85% of his content or this person's content is authentic and
yeah,
15% is AI generated. Like, it'll be interesting to see how
yeah.
how
I
that
guess
would
for
go
me,
over with folks.
yeah, someone shared last night apparently that it's a real problem for like some universities now that they can't tell
Mm,
whether the
yeah.
papers that are being written are written by students or by AI. So they did a bit of a test comparing. They didn't tell the lecturers and presented some papers. 50% were human written, 50% were AI, and the AI papers actually scored better than the human papers. So again, that becomes a real challenge of like how do you tell like whether somebody's having the papers written by AI or whether it's like how do you then like test somebody on what they're learning to university if they can just go away and get all the answers from AI. Like what that's quite an interesting thing to sort of think on a bit more, and it's sort of back to that authenticity score, like how I think AI content will become harder to distinguish in its written form, but then it becomes like the content as a whole. Like if it's just a piece of content that's written that sounds like a human, then maybe you have to distinguish it with like we were saying about before. You may have to put a like embed a video that you've done talking about your content as well, or you have people a little bit like LinkedIn's, like where you essentially to say this person can do what they say they can do. So like,
Mm.
does that become part of the written content that sites put out there, and does Google start using that to present human content over AI SEO driven content that people are putting up to try and just gain the search engines? So again, that's quite an interesting area that we just walked down to sort of think about what would be best for content creators. And that's one thing that with the Jetpack AI assistant is that we don't want it just to be creating content. We want it's an assistant. That's why it's in the name. It's to help you create better content. So whether that's content ideas, whether that's proofreading what you've done, whether it's helping you write easier to read content, all that type of stuff. That like we don't want people just churning out any old content. It wants to be just like an assistant helping you do better work and faster work.
It's definitely helpful. What I like is that it's contextual, so it's reading almost as you're writing. And so when I ask it a question, I don't have to tell it, this is what I'm writing about, this is who the audience is. Like it sort of already has a little bit of that built in because you've got your content right there. Um, I like the little things where it's really helpful is in like writing excerpts, right?
Mm.
And sort of populating your excerpt because it can just read your content, and that those little bits are the ones that are hard sometimes to figure out, or meta descriptions, right? If you're using any kind of SEO enhancement plugins on your site, um, things like that are really helpful in um, just helping because I don't often know how best to do this in 140 characters or less. But if I can give those constraints to AI and say, you read the article, you tell me what you think a good 140 character or less summary is, that works for me, right? And that I think is a way that AI helps enhance authentic work and is a good use case because that speeds up my workflow and gets me over the finish line a lot quicker.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's still some things where there's like even when I've done the AI excerpts, it'll pop up and say like in summary. So I'm like, let's delete that bit. So
Yeah.
I think it will get better over time as well. Like, or it might say the author is suggesting this in this post. I'm like, we don't need that type of stuff. So all these little bits of feedback and things that are coming back will help refine like the models for
Mm,
creating that type of response from the AI. So
Absolutely.
yeah, interesting. So AI, we talked about AI, we talked about newsletters. Again, is there anything else that you like about Jetpack that people may not be aware of?
I think so from my perspective, I work very much on the self-hosted side. So WordPress.com has Jetpack features built in, and it comes pre-packaged there, which is awesome. But for those of us who are in the self-hosted world, and maybe with a bit of history in the WordPress ecosystem, Jetpack has been around long enough that I think all of us have a history with it, whether it's a positive history or a negative history. And I think if I'm just going to say anything to anyone, it's if you haven't really taken a look at Jetpack in the last 3 to 4 years, I think it's worth revisiting, and it's worth having a look at how things have changed. The tooling that's there, the way they've broken things up into individual little plugins means that you can really opt into the pieces that you need. Um, but the rollout and the design of those features, for me as a user, is great. But I'm also starting to think now even about websites I'm building for friends, or projects I might do if I was to do client work. That there is a lot of value to be had in Jetpack that I think gets missed because of, you know, history, right? When you used a plugin 10 years ago, obviously the features and the rollout and things are going to be totally different. And if you let a 10-year-old judgment of a product dissuade you from having a second look at it, I think that does you and your clients and your world a disservice. So yeah, if you get a chance, have a look. The subscriber thing is really cool. Just as an aside, they've rolled out recently, like they've got a whole new panel in Jetpack Stats on subscribers and in the app as well. So you can actually go in and take a look and do a deeper dive into your subscribers. I know there's lots of work being done on some of those features to really make it more flexible and easier for you as a content creator to reach your network of readers in a lot more customizable ways. And so I'm quite excited. I was pleasantly surprised at WordCamp Europe to head over to the Jetpack booth. It's not a booth I would normally have gone to because I'm like, oh yeah, Jetpack. I know Jetpack.
Mhm.
Moving on. But I went, and talking to the product managers there, and just hearing the passion that they have for such a you know, um, I'm older legacy product, legacy in the better sense of the word,
Mhm.
right? It's got a lot of history with WordPress. I was really surprised, pleasantly surprised, and it got me excited about what Jetpack is doing and what they're working on and what the future has in store for content creators. So yeah, I think that's probably my last little bit on it.
Yeah, so I think, like, for me, obviously within the Jetpack division, the thing that I like about, like, the way, again, from before I joined Automatic and all that, Jetpack was a plugin. It was the Jetpack plugin, and it did. I think at the time it did the image optimization, so your images would change from being hosted on your domain to the i0.wp.com to save you bandwidth. And so that was sort of like the time when I used it. And since then, what I like about Jetpack is it's evolved into more of a brand, and you have a lot more choice of, like, you got Jetpack Forms if you don't want to use, like, well, no one really talks about Jetpack Forms, or you've got all the cool things in Jetpack Stats. Now with Google Analytics 4 being really difficult to use, Jetpack Stats is super easy to use. And the thing that I like about all of it together is that it's a consistent, like, UX, it's a consistent feeling, so that you know you're using a Jetpack product and you're not, like, having to learn a whole new, like, different set of UI and user experience and like information architecture. So it's all designed by, like, a central team of designers, and there's different. It's all on a public repo, and all of the individual products are sort of sitting in that over on GitHub, so anybody can go in and poke around and see what's going on, like, the public side of things. They can develop on top of it. There's a lot of things that, like, if people are used to those 10-year ago perceptions of Jetpack just slowing down the site, which it might have done in certain situations, and then people tend to go back on that fact, like, and don't even want to think about giving it another try. And the fact that there are certain, you can turn everything off in modules and settings and just use the things that you want to at the moment, and the individual plugins. I think CRM, when we brought that in, that was a true standalone, like it didn't need Jetpack at all. And that sort of got people like excited about the fact that, yeah, it's consistent in look and feel and used to what I'm used to with Jetpack, but I don't need everything else if I don't want everything else. And sort of moving that way will just give a lot more flexibility, and it's a product that's backed by Automatic, and it's got hundreds of happiness engineers and support people helping out as well. So it's not a plugin that's just going to drop off the radar. And I come from, like, before Automatic, I was an Envato Elite author, and there was a ton of, like, I got my Tim Tams in the post, all of that type of stuff at the time. And like there were some plugins on there that were sort of put up and they just weren't supported amazingly well. And it was sort of, I even actually wrote an open letter to Envato. I can link that to you outside of this for a fun read if you want to, given you used to be at Envato. But I think like having that, using a product that you know has been around that amount of time and that's, like you said, had the passion, and all the product managers and people working on it still passionate to talk about it, still excited, sort of shows that it's not like you need to get rid of those old perceptions and just give it another look.
I'm looking now because I think one of the really cool things about Jetpack is you have the ability to, find the individual tools that you want, pay for those, but they also have a what they call Jetpack Complete. So if you are finding yourself using all of the things, you can go in and get the complete thing. It's fantastic. So highly recommend taking a look at it, having a really good look at all of the things that are going on with Jetpack these days. I'm about to, after this call, go and check out CRM just because it's not something that I have explored on Jetpack yet. So I'm quite excited to go have a look and
Ooh, well, are you
dig into
talking to a co-founder? So it's, yeah, that started off in 2016, 17, just as our frustrations of not having an easy to use like client relationship manager that worked with WooCommerce. There was one on Envato that was WooCommerce. I think it was called WooCommerce CRM. And all it did was gave you like a little map of where your customers were from, and you couldn't really do much. You could maybe click the phone number to call them, but like you're not calling like random customers. Certainly I wasn't when I was running like a digital product shop. I wanted to see like whether different people had purchased from, because I ran a theme shop and a plugin shop, both separate installs, but then I could bring it all together in a single CRM, email them, keep in touch, see who was, like, I was doing freelance work for at the time as well. We were doing freelance for some of the people that had ordered. We were bringing lots of different flows together that like a WooCommerce specific analytics on your WooCommerce install didn't quite get you, but using a CRM, it brought it all into one place. And so it's good that it is now Jetpack CRM and it works. Like you can use it with WooCommerce for free, and it's, again, I could talk about the CRM for hours. So again, once you've dug into that, maybe we could have a follow-up about why you should definitely use a CRM for every stage of your content creation business. But cool, yeah, we've been chatting for a while now. I just want to say, like, this video is not like all the nice things that James has been saying. Like, I've not paid him in advance or anything like that. I think it's just a genuine. It's nice to meet a fan and like probably a converted user that was aware of these perceptions, has given it another go, and it's actually really useful, and it's really helping. Like you said, it's doubled your subscribers. It's done all of this extra stuff. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time on the back of an ad hoc tweet. If people want to find out more about you, you're on Twitter, again, and your website, you'll be able to see the link underneath James's name. And I'll put all the links in the description to the Twitters for both myself and James if you do want to connect with us. Again, we'll be more than happy to talk to anybody there. So thank you so much, James, for the time. It's been good to have a chat that's not in a dingy basement at the back of a WordCamp 2017. And I'm sure we will see each other at future WordCamps.
Sounds great.